Welcome to In the Spotlight. I'm Abigail Pogrebin. Reuven Fenton has been covering breaking news for the New York Post since 2007 and has earned national recognition for his exclusive reporting on myriad national stories. He is a graduate of Yeshiva University and Columbia University School of Journalism. Goyhood, great title, is his debut novel. Welcome. Nice to see you, Reuven.
Nice to see you. What a pleasure.
So, you're a fiction writer.
Yes, all of a sudden. Yeah, I made the leap.
From the New York Post to fiction. Before we get to the book, just give us a little bit of your Jewish bio, because it actually is quite extensive.
Yeah, well, in summary, I grew up in a traditional but not particularly religious household, and then when I was about 12, my parents made a sort of abrupt transition into observance, into Orthodox Judaism.
And why did that happen?
It's a complicated story, but essentially it has mainly to do with this yearning in my mother's heart, which can only be described as a spiritual yearning that came from who knows where. To be back with a full-fledged member of her people, practicing and everything, and my father wanted that too, so we got involved with our local Chabad in the town I'm from, Lexington, Massachusetts, and then it was a very rapid transition, I would say, into deep observance, and from then on, into only Jewish schools, and I had been going to a Jewish school, but a conservative. We switched to Orthodox. And then went on to Yeshiva University. So it's been a life of observance since, but also with this sort of I'm still slightly traumatized even to this day from that abrupt trans. So there's this pull inside me, I think, between secular and tradition.
In a way, you become a translator for more secular Jews or the secular world about what it means to kind of cross over or to be deeply in an observant life. Can you just give a sense of that?
So true. I walk this tightrope. I think I was uniquely qualified to write this book because there aren't many people like me who have a deep knowledge about Jewish life and culture and syntax and everything like that, tradition. But I also have a deep knowledge of just the secular world at large. As a reporter for the New York Post, I've been there for so long. I've seen everything, covered every type of news story, and I like to think a half decent writer. Okay, so I have this education. One time I went to the Columbia Journalism School. I have the qualifications and this knowledge. I mean, I don't know many people who have that. So I was in a unique position here, and I ended up pulling that off. So as you say, I am a translator. In which I've written a book which is technically a secular book. The publisher is not a Jewish publisher, but it's a Jewish book, but a secular one at the same time.
And we're speaking at a time where there is a lot of discussion about the literary world kind of being strained by post-October 7th and the anti-Zionism and the sort of sense of there being almost a litmus test on whose voices should be heard right now. Before, again, we get to the book itself, can you tell us what you've observed as having a book come out in the middle of this moment?
I'll tell you, I started writing it before October 7th, and that was rough enough. I mean, it was, publishers, agents and then publishers didn't seem exactly eager to take on a project written by a white male whose protagonists were two white males. That was a problem in itself, but I managed to pull it off. And a Jewish book nonetheless, not exactly the most popular subject to begin with. We've kind of, our literary heyday has kind of fallen out of fashion since Philip Roth and guys like that. I would say maybe the peak being the 60s and 70s, Saul Bellow. So we're not exactly the most popular writers out there nowadays, but nevertheless, I pulled it off. Come October 7th, there entered this wave, and a wave that was really just a sub-wave of the wave we're already seeing with it. Universities and all this craziness going on with activism hit the publishing world hard. So this manifested in everything from assembling en masse to review bomb Jewish authors' books if they've so much as ever posted anything. Let's say after October 8th. Some author wrote something positive about the Jewish Ambulance Corps, doing a good job saving people. Like that alone would get you canceled. a few weeks ago, about a month ago, a list came out. It went viral, the spreadsheet. I don't know if you saw it.
I did see it.
Okay, pretty nightmarish, right?
Pretty
And
nightmarish.
for those who aren't familiar with it, in summary, it just was a list of some 200 authors who had ever, again, posted anything positive or even not critical of Israel
On their social media.
on their social media, and it was a list that really brought to mind lists of Jews and some Gentiles as well. If they were kind enough to say anything supportive of Israel, to not buy their books, boycott, and it was color coded, as if that weren't enough.
Right.
So we're just
the least worst.
Yeah.
It kind of ranked according to their sins.
This is the world I'm entering right now. I've interviewed authors who've had their book events canceled because basically some activists caught wind of their schedule and threatened to protest outside, let's say, a certain bookstore the night of this event, so the bookstore will cancel the event on the author. This happened multiple. I've interviewed a ton of authors. This has happened to. And so, again, this is the world I'm entering.
So how do you approach that? Can you just give us a sense? Are you kind of just soldiering ahead, or are you kind of playing down in any way the Jewishness? You can't really play down the Jewishness of this book.
Well, as I point, I wrote somewhere, I think it might have been that same op-ed, I can't, I don't have the convenience of playing undercover. I could take this off, but then again, the book is, as I say, deeply Jewish. And in a sense, I decided, I'm not gonna hide. And like I said, I went ahead with that op-ed, like deep diving into the situation. Went very public with it. My picture's on the op-ed, a little stamp.
And give a sense of what you said in the op-ed.
Well, I talked about the world I'm entering. So I'm saying, there's anxiety dealing with all this, but at the same time, I'm looking, I'm looking at all these writers and artists who are Jewish, who are soldiering ahead, who've been through this already. And I'm saying, well, these are role models to me now. There's this group called Writers Against Anti-Semitism. It's about 30 women, Jewish authors, who put this group together, like a support group for such things. I'm like, the tide is, they're out there now, battling this thing, and I want to be a part of it. Okay, I don't want to get canceled, but I'm not gonna hide.
And before we leave it, just because it's so unfathomable, I think, to you and to me sitting here, let's give them the greatest benefit of the doubt, not the person who made that sickening list, but for those who are saying, how can I amplify a voice whom I disagree with so vehemently? Like, what is the best case scenario for their approach right now to writers who support Israel in any way? Do you understand it at all?
What's the best case of what they're ideally hoping for?
Or if you put yourself in their shoes, is there anything that they're saying that you think is legitimate?
Well, no, absolutely not. Their tactic is pretty clever, though, and because when I think of propaganda, what I consider propaganda, which is what they claim to consider our stuff, I would like to see propaganda silenced. Okay, and I would love to see mobilized efforts to shut down, and there are mobilized efforts to shut down people who propagandize, anti-Semitism and anti-Israel material. So, as I say, their tactics are great. I wish they could use their skills for good and not evil.
You mean great and effective, not
effective,
right, not great.
Horribly admirable.
It's working.
They're talented already, and it's working, and I'd love to see them actually use all their skills for good, because these are smart people. These aren't.
So the book, which is wonderful, tell us, I know it's hard in fiction to kind of give the story away, but give us a little bit of a sense of the characters and what happens.
Well, the central issue of the story is this. The story focuses around a guy named Meir Belkin, who's a deeply, deeply Orthodox Jew. He's kind of on the young side of middle-aged. And he discovers one day, he's deeply committed in the yeshiva world of Brooklyn, day after day of studying Torah, and he discovers one day that he's actually not Jewish. There was a mistake, which is part of the story, more than a mistake, but basically he's not a Jew, and this creates a whole existential crisis for him, which ends up manifesting. He and his brother David, who's a completely not religious Jew, his twin brother. They go on this road trip. Why they go on the road trip is plot-oriented material that I'll save for the reader, but they end up going on a road trip for a week through the Deep South. Along the way, they get into a myriad of wacky adventures, some hair-raising tales, and along the way, they're transformed as they learn more about themselves, about each other, and ultimately come to a resolution of how to deal with this crisis.
And why did you want to deal with this subject? Does it harken back to the change that you said happened at 11 years old?
You know, that may be unconsciously, but I could tell you this, that, I mean, all my ideas, and I'm actually working on another novel now, which I won't talk about, but I will say that my ideas are always these what-if scenarios. Like, wouldn't it be wild if? And these are the kinds of things that pop into your head when you're just not thinking about anything, washing the dishes, whatever it is you're doing. You get this what-if idea, and I'm like, wouldn't it be wild if you were what would happen if you were this Orthodox Jew, deeply, deeply, deeply committed, and you think that you're praying and talking to God every day, and like having a conversation with God during prayer as a Jew, and then you find out that it was like not real, that you weren't one, and how would you deal with that? And I was just like fascinated by that as a story, and then I ended up moving. I have lots of ideas like that. I keep a whole list on my phone, but that particular one I decided to pursue because it's so important to me, the topic at large.
I just want to read one. This is from page 12. Marty was more than miffed that his mother had waited until now to drop this bombshell, as an aside, no less. But the dominant feeling was exaltation. A Jew, Marty Belkin, a member. He'd never been a member of anything, not even the Audubon Society. So that idea of belonging is you're also playing with in this book. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
His circumstances are pretty dismal as a child. They live in a rural place in Georgia, and basically his life is not great. As I get into the story, it's pretty gritty. And then this rabbi comes along, and basically, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but basically it's revealed that Meir, so he thinks at the time, is a Jew, and it's just like it's this eye-opening thing, because like, oh wow, it's like all of a sudden I'm a member. I belong to a people, to a society, and not only any society, but like this ancient society that I really know nothing about, but the little I do know really appeals to me. Like, this is these are the chosen people. This is like something major here. And again, that feeling of belonging, which he has been missing in his life, and ultimately late in his adult life, to some degree, he still doesn't quite belong. But that impulse is there. That's the incentive.
And then you write later in the book, this is on the road trip, not 24 hours, a goy, and he was doing an outstanding job, waking at noon in a New Orleans hotel that smelled of beer and reefer and lemongrass. How tempting it was to hold Leibel, the mountain of comforter, rising and falling beside him on the bed. So just this sense of almost like you're putting on new clothing when you're no longer a Jew. Like,
that's right.
That's not just about the stereotype of a goy and a Jew. And can we use that word, goy? I mean, I guess we can. I feel uncomfortable when it comes out of my mouth.
Right, but as a Jew, I think it's maybe more comfortable as a Jew to say it than a goy.
But just the idea of like, what is it to not be a Jew, and what is it to be a Jew, aside from just the signs of observance?
Well, from his point of view, listen, there are many non-Jews out there who are incredible people, many admirable, accomplished people in the world. But his idea,
not the people who are canceling writers, by the way.
Not those people, nope. But his perception of like what a Gentile means is sort of the people that he associated with as a youth. These kind of like lowlives that were in his town, that would come over to his house to visit his mom. And so his perception is essentially like he has a generalized idea of what I call Goyhood, is a word that I use in the book. So this is Goyhood. This is what it means.
Did you coin that term?
I coined it. It came to me as in the moment that the word comes up, where he's in a situation where everything's pandemonium, and he's like, oh, so this is Goyhood, just ricocheting around the world without having any rudderless, I think is the word I use. And so again, like, that's his idea of what to be a non-Jew is, to essentially be this directionless type of person, that with living a directionless life and waking up in a hotel that smells of beer. Like, that's his generalized notion.
Can you also, again, I don't want to give the plot away, but it does matter kind of whether his mother's Jewish or not. And I am a Reform Jew, and I know that patrilineal descent was deemed to be legitimate. And in your book, it's kind of delegitimizing. So can you just address sort of...
Absolutely. So keep in mind, I mean, so this is all from the perspective of a guy who's Orthodox, not just Orthodox, like high level Orthodox. Okay, so we're telling the story under the assumption, based on his understanding of what a Jew is, like the word used, like halachically a Jew, is that your mother must be the one who's the Jew. Your father doesn't have to be, but your mother does. So, and that's what the story is sort of built around, that assumption of what his world is built around. So, and it's an interesting point you brought up. But I don't. It's not really a spoiler to mention that a Reform rabbi, one woman no less, actually does factor into the book near the end, and she ends up being the kind of the King Solomon of the tale. She's the wise one who sort of
adjudicates.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But that being said, yeah. So it does go under that assumption.
I just want to read one more piece. He returns to Judaism. Can we say that he chooses it again? Am I right? Kind of.
Yeah, don't give too much away, but yes.
Okay, so his muted reaction had a precedent. On the last day of Moses' life, God told the children of Israel, quote, "And not only with you am I making this covenant and this oath, but with those standing here with us today before the Lord our God, and with those who are not here with us today." The Talmud clarified that, quote, "with those who are not here with us today," referred to the souls present at Mount Sinai that would inhabit the bodies of future converts. In other words, Meir's Jewish soul had been on deck all along.
Right.
I feel like that's just so true of so many of us, where you're not necessarily in touch with something. Officially Jewish or not, those of us, you have to make a choice at a certain point, even if you were kind of bestowed Judaism at the start. That idea that ultimately, and particularly now, people are kind of choosing again whether to be publicly Jewish, whether to kind of double down on their Jewish identity and their Jewish literacy. So again, without being kind of too global about it, if you can just kind of, I love that Moses moment.
I think it right now is the perfect time, unfortunately, tragically, but it's true. So many Jews right now in post-October 7th world are coming back to it, not necessarily in a religious way, but maybe in a nationalistic or just a patriotic way. Somehow, I'm just seeing it all around. Just Jews are reconnecting as a people. It's almost as if for so many people, so many Jews, like their Jewishness became kind of a side point that they weren't very conscious of anymore. And somehow this event, this horrible massacre, and everything that followed, it just brought back Jewishness into people's consciousness. I think is that's and I have this conversation this is anecdotal, but I have this conversation with too many people for it to just be anecdotal. This is something that I think is across the board, something that's being felt right now.
And as a reporter now, when you think about the fact that you have essentially a bully pulpit, or at least a megaphone that others might not, do you feel an extra responsibility to sort of report this story differently or more kind of vigilantly?
Totally. As a matter of fact, I was just in Israel a couple of weeks ago. I was on a work trip. I spent a week there, and we visited the kind of relevant locations that have in the north and the south having to do with the situation there. And I wrote these columns. I really wrote these columns from the heart, just about the situation there and about what it's like, and about the spirit of nationality right now among Jews too. That was a big theme. It's impossible not to be affected, journalist or not, by what's been going on. And I've been covering way too many of these, anti-Israel protests going around in New York, Columbia University, all this stuff. It's impossible not to be affected. And not only that, but I do feel an obligation because literally, in journalism, we talk about objectivity. Oh, you have to be objective. You have to be objective. Well, to me, my objectivity is that this is wrong, what's been going on right now. And I'm going to write what's right. And by the way, I'm not doing. There's nothing radical about that because there's plenty of journalists on the other side. Okay, what I consider the wrong side,
who feel they're right.
Who feel they're right. So listen, we're all basically crusading journalists right now. It's unfortunate because I really am much more of a just the facts man kind of reporter at heart. But that went out the window with this whole thing because it's like we're fighting facts with fake facts with real facts. Wow. That's what the job has become.
So how do you actually write a novel in the midst of your day job? Did you take a leave? Do you get up at dawn? Give us a sense of your sort of writer's routine. I
see. Now you're getting to a philosophical worldview question, and I'll spare you most of it, other than to say that time is an amazing thing, and in our day, we have all these little windows that we don't appreciate. There's all these moments here, like an hour here, a half hour there, 15 minutes there, and they add up to a lot of time, you know? And so I find all these windows of time, you know, as a reporter, when I'm out in the field, you know, I'm a field reporter. I'm not an office journalist. I don't sit at a desk. And I'm in my car a lot of the time. And let's say you know, I have, like I'm waiting for this thing to start. I got a half hour. I work on it then. I find all these little windows, and they really do add up. And you'd be amazed what you can accomplish if you use your time well.
I am a writer like that. I grab time that, again, people might say they didn't know existed. In terms of your, though, parenting, because you're also a dad, how does that all figure in? Were they supportive? Were they involved? Did you talk to them about your story?
I might be a little odd with this, but I'm such a closed mouth. I really kept this to myself. You know, for one of the reasons being, I didn't know if it was going to work out. But I don't really talk about my work. That's the truth. I mean, I'll talk about if I do something interesting for the Post, I'll talk about it. But with the writing, I'm very, very, very closed mouth. I almost think it's like a superstition with me. Like don't talk about what don't talk about what you're writing. Like, don't tell anyone. Don't show it to anyone. God forbid. Okay.
Did you show it to no one?
Once my manuscript was,
really
I thought as perfect as it can be, I showed it to my brother, and then and that was it. And I started pitching it out to agents. Okay, like I'm really all about because I think the slight, you know, it's such a delicate process writing, particularly with fiction, because
so if you doubted yourself for a minute, you wouldn't.
One wayward look from somebody could actually spoil the whole thing for me. If somebody read it and said, I got you know, that would just ruin it for me, and I might give up. Okay, it's that delicate.
But did you ever learn creative writing? Did you ever take a class, a seminar? Were you in a writing group?
No. I kind of studied it on my own. This is self-taught. I mean, I read a lot. In a sense, I do. It's self-taught that I read about writing. You know, I read craft books, and I get Writer's Digest. I subscribe to that. That's very useful. And then I just really, when I got serious about this, I really wanted to do this. I started really paying attention to the novels I read. Really studying them hard
Structure,
as I read them.
pace.
All those things, and understanding that there's a checklist of things you have to do. You absolutely must do them all. Like don't go rogue. Don't be experimental unless you're a genius, or which I most certainly am not. If you're a genius, that's a whole other thing. I mean, you know.
But basically, don't reinvent the wheel. There's a reason why things work or don't work.
Follow the 3-act structure. Make sure your characters undergo a transformation as the book progresses. Things like that. Dialogue.
I just want to end with modern orthodoxy, because that's where you align yourself. Am I right?
You know, for simplicity's sake, I'll say yes, although it's a little more complicated.
Yes, it always is.
Yes.
But you said at one point, I'm not convinced that modern orthodoxy is entirely a successful movement, because it's somewhat of a compromise, and compromise can be tough when you're a Jew.
Yeah. Is that an exact quote?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I said it on a Zev Brenner show, if memory serves. But so you want me to expand on that? I'm getting a little older. You know, I'm not a kid anymore, and my views have changed. And in terms of my religiosity, I kind of think that there is just too many. It's too easy to leave because the world at large, the secular world at large, has too many offerings that want to pull us away from our Judaism. You know, like Judaism is you know, you really you know, you got to commit to it somehow. Okay, and at least if you want to pursue the the Orthodox route.
Not somehow. It's so demanding.
Yeah, but to not go all the way. Say, well, I'll go part way, but I'll also kind of embrace the secular at the same time, which I still do. I mean, to be honest with you, but less and less with the secular. I got to say, as I get older, it holds less and less appeal to me. But I think when you're young in particular, and there's all these things you love, especially kids, all the TikTok videos and all these like wonderful things that you flip through on your phone that are just so appealing and so trendy and so cool, and that are ultimately going to pull you away from religiosity, which is really the opposite of those things. You know, religion is not trendy, it's not cool, and it's demanding, and it can be if you look at it the wrong way, or it's very easy to look at it as like basically a pain that you don't want to deal with. Oh, well, why should I eat kosher? I mean, really, why?
Why should I sit in synagogue this long?
Yeah, and so I do think that compromise opens the door to temptations, which ultimately, I sound like like an old school preacher right here talking about temptations, but like this is where I am in life right now, where I've come to believe these things.
So when, I just want to end with the fact, you used the word trauma in a sense, or that you have post-traumatic stress a little bit from that transition, young transition from, I guess not secular exactly, but from not observant to observant. And why do you use that word? Like what was so jarring about it, and how does that stay with you?
You know, it's funny because the thing I always come back to, and it sounds silly, but like it was losing the Saturday morning cartoons, which was such a big thing for us as kids, like getting up early and watching the cartoons on Saturday morning, and losing that for a guy. I've always maybe had a tough time with change, less so now, but as a kid, very, very tough time with change in general. So all of a sudden, we're doing all these things. Like my mother's covering her hair. We're not buying like these different food products foods that I used to love. And they to a guy my age, these was not be so significant. When you're a kid,
those are the joys.
It's like it's you know, I almost hate the word trauma because there's real trauma going on in the world right now.
Right.
And I hate using that word because that is not trauma relative. But in my little child brain, it was traumatizing. It was
a lot of loss. It was a lot.
Yeah. And it just threw me, and there was a lot of resentment and a lot of embarrassment, you know,
And did you like resist it? Did you rebel?
I did, but not to an extent, because it happens to be that my parents were very, very disciplinary type parents. You know what I mean? And they didn't really open the doors to rebellion. It just wasn't really an option somehow. They instilled that in me, that it just wasn't. So I'm more just kind of seethed. And but it impacted me, and I mean, it you know, to this day it does impact me. I mean, even you know, when professionally, it's like I don't wear this when I'm wearing this now because having a lot to do with October 7th, you know, and kind of embracing my Jewish identity and being more proud about it. But
you don't wear it at the Post.
I don't wear it at the Post, and I may well have come in today not wearing it had October 7th never happened. But it's important to me right now to wear it as much as I possibly can.
The book is Goyhood, a novel by Reuven Fenton. Thank you, Reuven, for being here today. I'm Abigail Pogrebin for In the Spotlight. I'll see you next time.